Hello all, and welcome to the Fantasy and Sci-Fi Fanatics podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Coolbaugh, and I have with me today a very special guest, Jim Wilbourne. Jim, how are you doing today?
Pretty good. How are you?
I'm excellent. I feel like I've talked a lot this week, but I'm like good to go. That means I just talked to a lot of cool people and got some good
Absolutely.
podcasts. So, like I said before we got done talking before we started recording, we'll go ahead and start with that first question there. What has your writing journey been like up until this point? This seems to be a favorite one for our audience and myself. So.
uh, Long and fantastic. Um, I mean, so I kind of started writing in high school, like a lot of people, and you know, at a certain point, I gave up on it. And I moved on to other things. I did a lot of music after high school for about 10 years. I did like light touring and whatnot, and as I was kind of coming to the close of that part of my life, I was like, well, what can I do? Like, I can't stop making stuff. So I, thought, oh, well, maybe I should give this writing thing a go again. And at that time, I didn't really know about indie publishing or anything, which is the direction I went into. But, I just started reading and then I started writing. And I actually started writing my most recent book around this time. And I got like 2 chapters in and I stopped and I realized like, I don't know what I'm doing. I have no idea what I'm doing. I need to stop and figure out what I'm doing because I had enough intuition at that point to know that I was going to write a trash story if I kept going the way that I was going. So, I actually stepped back and I started to approach writing like I needed to get a degree in creative writing. I, read a lot of books on writing. I started, really critically analyzing storytelling and the books that I loved. I would read it and then I'd read it again and I'd look at, what made me feel this way, and how did they do that? What would happen if you change this in the story? What would that do to the story? Would it feel the same? And I would experiment with things like that. I even wrote papers to myself, just explaining my ideas about storytelling and my
Cool.
and what I want to accomplish. And you know, after that, I felt a little more confident in actually releasing something. And I'm not saying that this is how most people should approach it. I think I'm a little crazy when it comes to that. I just had a lot of self-doubt, and that made me feel better about it. That I actually did went a really far extra mile to educate myself on the process. But I did that. I had 2 dev edits on my novel, and after that, I felt pretty confident it was about as good as it was going to get. So, and that's when I, fired away, and the rest is history, I guess. So.
It sounds like you're a lot smarter than I am. I literally like for 10 years was just like, oh, I'm just gonna write this story. And then I like left 20,000 words. I was like, oh, I'm just gonna write this story. And my friend asked it, he goes, you probably started like what, like 7 books? I was like, at least. Like now I'm thinking like, if I just go back and redo the outlines, like it'll probably be pretty quick, because the characters are there and stuff. So it sounds like you did it much smarter than I did. It took me 14 years to finish a draft because I wasn't doing the homework and treating it like it was something concrete. I was treating it like it was just, I don't even know what I was doing. I was talking to Dirk Ashton about it a couple weeks. I was like, I didn't know what I was doing, which I think it's good to acknowledge that, right? That
Yeah.
maybe novel 14, like someone just told me yesterday. You might still not know what you're doing, but at least you get
Right.
it done. So yeah, I think that's a terrific answer. And I think that's what most people really like to hear is, that we're all in the same boat. And I've had people, I've had like Dirk Ashton, Michael R. Fletcher, Kelly McCullough, who did the Fallen Blade series. And, you're talking to somebody who's written, 14, I don't even know now, like well into the teens and 20s, for novels. And it's funny to hear
Right.
people say all the same thing, no matter if it's their first novel or their 20th novel. I think it makes people feel good that we're all in this together.
Right, exactly. that's kind of the secret of writing is pretty much nobody knows what they're doing. They're kind of figuring it out as they go, So yeah, take comfort in that.
Yeah. Well, it's like Mallory Kuhn yesterday. We're in part 2 of our interview, and she had said, like I think it was like Brandon Sanderson had said the same thing, like that he did like novel 14, and he was just like every time it felt like he was doing the process for the first time again.
Mhm.
I told her, I was like, I hope it doesn't feel like that as I'm, starting my second one, like officially. Like, I hope I learned something from this crazy mess. But that's why we're doing the podcast, right? That we hope we can
Right.
learn from each other. But that's a great answer. So
What's
what is? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say what's interesting is that part of the reason I did it the way that I did it was because, oh goodness, I can't think of the name of the book, but I was reading a nonfiction book about the process of learning and how to reteach yourself how to learn things, which was pretty interesting. But basically, it boils down to the idea of like, oh, you just need to subdivide, everything into smaller pieces and then practice that piece, and then reapply that into the whole, instead of trying to learn everything at once. So again, I mean, if that helps, that I think that was very helpful to me. It's like, oh, let me write, a short story so that I can, make my dialogue smoother, or description or action or something. Just learning that one piece and then figuring out how to reintegrate it into the whole, So
I I think that's brilliant advice, and I'm actually going to take that myself for my draft 2. And Michael R. Fletcher kind of told me the same thing with editing.
right,
He
right.
just goes through and the first time just kind of like picks one thing, and then he'll do like 14 different times. I guess I really
I
like what
do
you
the exact
said.
same thing.
Yeah, but I like what you said though, because I definitely think I was already kind of thinking that for like my next novel is like, trying to not create, like maybe like start with character, like development or something first, and then worry about whatever it is, fight scenes or arc or something. Like, yeah, like do it in chunks. I think that's
Right.
really great advice.
Yeah, there's no correct way to write a novel as long
Amen.
as it comes together right at the end. It doesn't matter how you got there,
As
So
long as you hit that deadline, right?
right.
Well, it's like funny that you said that, because I was just listening to a podcast the other day, and I think it was Wizards, Warriors, and Words actually, and they had interviewed somebody. I'm totally blanking on who it was. I just listened to them over and over again. But like somebody had mentioned how like they didn't even like their ending, and then they went and were like had 2 of them, and it was literally like 3 days beforehand. There was a part where they could cut off, and it could be this ending or this ending, and they chose like B. And then the whole time they were sitting there thinking like, oh, I should have chosen A, like no one's gonna like this book now. And then it turned out like everybody loved it. And they
Right.
went back later and talked about, ending A. And a lot of people were like, nah, we didn't like it. And he was like, well, that was the one I liked. But at the same time, it's like, what does the reader want? So yeah,
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
there's so many different, things to think about. I just think it is really crazy when you think, like you came up with that product, and it's like
Mhm.
something in your head. It still amazes me that we like take things in our head and these imaginary people and worlds, and people create fandoms, or like want to sign your book, or like what I mean, like
Right.
it is kind of a, I can't really think of anything else that's like it, other than the music industry.
Mhm.
Because I feel like like art's one of those things, but like you can like visually see people's art, so I do think it's different in that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean, like it's kind of like a like a conceptual thing, and I think music's the only other thing I could think of, because you're doing the same thing, you're just using words to describe a feeling or a world, or different
Right.
people.
Right.
It's
I
very
always found it to be very special. And you know, uh, I try to let my readers know, the story is incomplete until you read it. You know, my characters aren't really alive until somebody else reads them. I put as much life into it as I can, and they really come alive when somebody else reads them and breathe new life into them, and they become a new person inside their head. And honestly, that's beautiful to me, so.
That's a great quote. I'm going through back through for first half of season 1 and getting quotes. So that's gonna be a really good one. That the story is incomplete until someone reads it. That's very on the money. I think that's a great quote for incorporeal feeling that's hard to capture. So that's a great quote there. I like that. So what is one thing you feel has been the most unique about your world building?
Um, I guess I can give you two things.
Oh, sure. Yeah,
Because
that's smart. Yeah.
I actually don't know what's the most interesting. But I guess the one that most people point out to me when they read is that they like that I mix magic with science,
Mm,
which is something that I do. It's perhaps done in a way you might not expect, but I growing up, I always loved science, and I also love science fiction. And when writing, or planning a fantasy world, my natural instinct is to look at magic and think, how is this connected to like the real world, and try to, make rules around it. And I don't always write the hardest magic systems. That's not the point to me. It's more of it feeling real to me. So I tend to mix science in when I can. Um, and then the other thing is what I like to kind of call world building the mundane, I guess. And just all the time throughout my novels. And it'll usually happen when I'm just writing away and I'll just put something in that's completely throwaway. You know, a bird that doesn't exist in our world, but I give it a new name and in a short description, a different way that someone, might use an instrument or a whole new instrument, that I don't spend a whole lot of time on. I just kind of state it and let it go, and it just kind of adds to the world building that it exists. And I kind of love that because it gives me that feeling of when you watch Star Wars for the first time,
oh, yeah.
and you saw that trash can robot, and he's kind of walking by, you're
Oh,
like,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
what is that? Like,
Yeah, yeah.
why is it there? What is it? What's the purpose of that? Is it really a trash can? So, to me, it's like that. It's like, I don't know. You think about it for a while, but you have to let it go because the story keeps going. It also gives me something to look back to and think, oh, I need something for this story. Oh, remember that thing I made up? Like, what if I bring that back? And it's fun. So yeah.
Well, I'm trying to remember I'm totally gonna like butcher this, but like I like how you put it though, like building the mundane. I think they said it was like those kind of little things are kind of like mulch, like they are throwaway, but they really end up helping what you're trying to grow in your world, and I think you do need those little pieces in order to make the bigger pieces feel real. So yeah, like I've never really considered doing that like with instruments, so that's like just like such a cool concept. And
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, that's you definitely have me thinking already of world building differently, so I think that's a great answer there. Yeah, that's really cool. Now I'm wondering what kind of birds I can put in mine.
Oh man. So naming things are always really fun with world building. And I simultaneously love doing it and hate it
Because
because
you're not sure if it's like right or not, but it's your
right,
thing, but it's like you have to like, yeah, you feel like it's got to fit, and it's like
right,
fit a circle in a
exactly.
square, and
And it can really derail you,
yeah,
especially if you're doing what I do and you kind of build it on the fly and you're typing and you're like, oh, what is this thing called? uh, and you either have to kind of skip it and come back to it, maybe tag it, or you go down a wormhole, a rabbit hole of trying to name this thing, and then you just burn 30 minutes of your writing time trying to name something. It's like, I should have done that. I should have just kept writing. But
30 minutes, if only. I think I get on I'm gonna do an episode on the fantasy name generator because I just love that website and it's free. I go on there all the time and I'll just like pick a name. So I used to do is I would try to find the name, right? Well,
Mhm.
30 minutes, I'd be on there for like 3.5 hours and like, then I have like a whole list of names that I'm like saving for later. And now what I do is I'll just go and put in a name, and
Right.
put in something cool and I'll just underline it or highlight it and be like, question mark, like change later. But Yeah, it's those rabbit holes, they'll get you.
Oh yeah. And it's something that I haven't talked about much while we're on the topic of world building is um, I built with a linguist friend of mine, acquaintance. We kind of built three conlings into my novel,
Oh, no.
like the foundations of them. You know, we based one on Sudanese, we based one on Japanese, and we based one on French, um, to help bring some realism into the world and consistency when I'm referring to things in those lands. And so one of the things I had to do was every now and then I sometimes go to him and say, oh, I need a word for this because when I look at the files that we drafted up, my eyes start to glaze over and I was like, I just want to keep writing the story. Can you just give me something? And he's like, yeah, I'll put something together. And he'll come back to me like a week later and like, oh yeah, here's a list of names for cities that you can use. And this one means this one means this one means that. And that is like a huge collaborative partnership that I don't want to take for granted because he's actually contributed a lot to my worlds by doing that with me. Because I couldn't have done that by myself. I'm not a linguist. I could have tried to do that, but it's better if I have a collaborator with that. It's almost like a language editor for something that doesn't even exist. So that was very helpful.
No, and it's actually, I actually keep forgetting to mention this because this keeps coming up. So I'm going to talk about it just real fast. So like you said, like a language editor, a few people had recommended to me. So like I've been trying to find people, like I have, like, for instance, I got like a Roman history, like I want to take the Lost Legion and explain why they were lost, right? And it's going to be with zombies. And it's just like my fun little historical fantasy project. I'm a history teacher.
Right.
So,
Okay.
and I thought, how cool would it be in book one to take them and explain why they're lost? Well, it came out, I saw this study recently while I was working on this during the pandemic, and this new study came out where they had this tax document in Spain, and it turns out that they don't actually think the Lost Legion was lost. They think that the documents were lost. And I'm like,
okay.
that's so boring. I'm doing it with zombies. And I was like, I'm still gonna do it. But like I'm trying to figure out, I'm doing the research and I'm just like, oh my God. And I'm thinking like, how many books can I read and how many websites and documentaries can I actually go to? So I was talking to Scott Oden about this, and he had a couple of people who he does the same thing where he goes to them and says, hey, like reenactors and things, and ask them questions. So I honestly think I'm about to start making friends with a Roman history expert because what I mean?
That is a
I'm
good
like,
idea.
yeah, and I'm like, I don't even care if you want your name on it too. Like, let's just like give me the information so that I can like create this awesome book and trilogy, and everybody will have fun with it. And I
Right.
even talked to my buddy. I was like, I might even just contract somebody, like just to get the information, or to do the like what you did and just have them be like a Roman military editor or something. Because I do want it to feel real. I do want some of the historical fiction people like me who like to read historical fiction and fantasy. But I think it's important to find those partners. And Scott Oda made a good point. He's like, go ask any of these people. So he gave me a few people and he goes, go ask any of these people. He's like, they want to tell you about these things. So,
right.
if you came to me and were talking to me about martial arts, like I had some people send me some fight scenes and stuff, and they're like, hey, they're like, check this out, see if this makes sense. And like, I love to talk about it. Like I'll talk about it all day long. So I get, that, but I do think it's important to find, collaborators and partners like you were mentioning, because
Absolutely.
they can add to your entire world, like you said. So to me, that sounds really cool from a world building aspect. So
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely.
that's super cool. I love when questions, I always tell people, like I send people the questions, but I always love when questions turn into like other things that we can talk about.
right.
You know what I mean? It's like, it's more natural. And, I think everybody learns a lot more that way. I know I learned a lot more that way today. So I always just use them as a guide. So if there's anything
Right.
else you want to add, like, please, like, that's the whole reason you're here. So please, please, please. So what has been one thing you've had to learn the hard way when it comes to your writing process?
Um, everything.
Yeah.
I mean,
That's a very honest answer. I like it. Amen to that.
okay, so remember how I talked about how, I tried to, learn how to learn better with breaking things down into its component parts. learning a specific skill and then folding it back in. That works really well. However, it's not a direct translation. So, while I was writing, my baby book, the one that, I'm very proud of, I wrote other projects, like other kind of lengthier projects that either went out as pen names or I kind of just trumped, So some of them I did because I wanted to practice something and I thought, oh, this is a good story too. I will just, maybe I can take this and build it back into the story. And it turns out that because of the length of the project that I was working on, it wasn't as easy as just putting, this element back into the book, because the book was a little too intricate that I could just shove something in, So because of that, I had a huge rewrite after the first draft. And it almost, if I had known that the rewrite would have been as hard as it was, I probably would not have started the book to begin with. I probably would have, I don't know, tried golf or something.
That's fair.
But again, I'm glad I didn't know how hard it was going to be, because I did it and I kept going. I was like, well, I'll just keep going. Like, what's the worst that could happen? I just fail, right? That's the worst that could happen. And nobody will ever read it. That's fine. But man, that rewrite, oh man, that rewrite was hard. I mean, I've heard other authors say it, and I wasn't really sure what happened to me, but it did. And at a certain point, you're like, I don't like this book anymore. I hate this book. And I never want to read it again. I'm done reading this book. And eventually you come back around to it and you're like, okay, I guess it's not that bad. So yeah, that was the hardest thing for me, is just figuring out how to write something on the scale that I was trying to write. It just, you couldn't just simply use the exact same methods that I learned how to use. And unfortunately, especially with epic fantasy, most writing courses that you take won't tell you how to write epic fantasy. It's like, this is how you write a normal novel with one protagonist, like you probably should write for your first outing, not, four protagonists, like, and a sprawling epic with a lot of world building. Yeah, my book ended up kind of being like writing two novels and a novella and trying to weave it all together. So that was very difficult. That was the hard work for me.
Yeah. I like how you mentioned breaking up with your novel many times. I have broken up with mine. I call it the high school novel, like where you break up with it over and over and you're like, why are we together still? Like, I feel like I've done that 4 times to mine, and I've tried, letting it go, and then I came back to it again, and I'm sure it's laughing at me right now as it's sitting downstairs waiting for me to do the last round of first draft edits. My big rewrite's coming, so I definitely know the feeling, and part of me is just like, just start something else. I'm like, I have 100 started, so I was like, just go somewhere. But I promised a lot of people that I would actually finish this one, so I'm like really trying. But I know I'll like it at the end, I'll love it, but I'm right there too. I'm like, I never want to see I just said to my wife before she went to the store with our friend, and before I got out with you, I was like, I don't want to see this novel ever again.
Right.
It's like, it's been 14 years, like just finish, like you're almost there. Like,
yeah, definitely finish, because that's another thing that I learned that was really helpful, is once you finish something big, it looks different automatically. It almost felt instantaneous. Like you got to the end of it and you thought, oh, that's the whole book. And then your whole perspective shifts, because it's harder to wrap your head around completing a book until you actually do it. And then once you do it, you're like, oh, so that's what the whole thing feels like. And it becomes easier to look at another book and say, oh, I could get to the end of that. I've done it before. So yeah, definitely finish it.
Yeah. So. Well, like I like it. Like we moved to New York, and where my wife is from, and it just recently, like it's taken me 6 years to get certified here after 2 master's degrees, and it was just like crazy. So like this summer, had finally gotten, I'd finally gotten my certification, and like I've worked like 4 jobs for like the last like 5 years just to, pay for this and do that, and like to do an internship, like a second internship, and it was like I finally was done, and I was just like, I was like, is this what it feels like? Like I was just like instantly just like Breakfast Club, like yes, and when I got done with my novel, it was different though for me because like I think it's because I wasn't fully done, but like the first draft, and I was like, oh, okay. And I think I literally let it sit for like 6 weeks.
Mhm.
And like it really took me a minute to realize like 14 years, like draft one was done. And my friend was like, well, how do you feel? And I'm like, I think I'll feel a lot better when I, can actually make it readable.
Right.
But I felt a lot better like once I was actually going through and editing, and I was like, oh, there is somewhat of a story here and things that you can use. But yeah, it's I do agree with you. It's a really interesting feeling. I think I just had like such a big writing hangover that I just like, I needed time to relax. So I went and wrote a couple other things and came up with some really cool ideas. But I like how you said that though. Like your perspective does change because I got this one like Griffin Rider series that I came up with on the fly after finishing this draft, and I was just like, oh, that's gonna be so cool. And as soon as I went in to do like, like an hour of an outline, I had like 8 really good chapters and character development, and it's like I had gained a level,
Right.
like in writing. Like it was crazy. And then that's when I was like, okay, I need to go back and really finish this book. So yeah, I
Mhm.
totally agree with that answer. It's a great answer there. Um, now you got me thinking so much about some different things, which is good. Um,
Great.
this one we can kind of go with or change. I'm just kind of, we've talked somewhat about your writing process, but what's the one
Mhm.
thing you find the hardest in your writing process?
Absolutely consistency.
Mm,
Um, it's my Achilles heel when it comes to writing. I'm a slower writer, um, and because of that, my biggest weapon would be consistency. You're slower, fine. Do a little bit every single day, and you'll get done faster, a lot faster than you anticipated, because of the consistency. If you're fast, you can stop and go pretty easily and still wrap up the project in the same amount of time or less. But you know, in indie publishing and really all publishing, you're not just taking on the job of a writer, you're doing a bunch of other jobs, marketer, PR, advertising, inventory management, sometimes accounting. You have to put on all those hats. And sometimes, you wake up and you think, I really need to, you know, get my books in order. And by books, I don't mean writing a book. I mean, oh, I didn't do any accounting for the past 2 months. I should probably do that. And you do it. And then, oh, wait, you know what? I should make these marketing graphics, and you make 10 of them. And, you didn't write that day, by the time you do all that. And I have to kind of try to wake up in the morning, because that's when I do my writing, is I try to wake up earlier in the morning, do it first thing, because then no matter what else happens to my day, I feel good that I did that thing that I'm supposed to do. So, but it's so easy to get derailed though, and it happens to me all the time, actually. So that's something that every time I get derailed, I have to recommit myself and just get back on the horse and say, okay, you fell off. What are you doing? Get back on the horse and be consistent again. And, you know, it, it's something I'm still dealing with, and I don't know how prevalent that is, but
so very.
man, it's a real big stinger for me. So yeah.
No, I totally agree with you. Like I'm one of those people where, they say you should write every day. And then, you know, you have other people who say, write when you want to write. I personally find that like, it's like going to the gym. Like if I don't go to the gym when I'm supposed to, and I miss a day, then I miss another day, I miss another day, then it's like I haven't been to the gym. Like, and I'm just like, okay, like what are we doing here? And I feel like the same with my writing. Like I have to write something, even if it's 25 words at the end of the day.
Mhm.
Coming home from work, or if we're doing something, or if I'm about to just read to, I just mentally, like the other day, I just had to read. I just was kind of over editing, and it was a really long day. And I was like, nope, like you really got to edit at least 10 pages today, just to like stay
Right.
on track. And I just find though that I have to write every day. And I personally find that it's like when I go to the gym, like if I'm just kind of do stuff for 30 minutes and leave again the next day, I probably not going to feel the way I should, and I'm not going to feel positive about it. So then I don't go the next time. And then it's the same problem. And I find the same problem with writing. Like I have to do like four 15-minute writing sprints in a day. And otherwise, like if I don't at least do like an hour, it's like my workout, I feel like crap. And then I don't do it the next day. I don't know if it's like just a
Right.
mental thing for me or what, but like I have to write every day. Otherwise, it just doesn't go well. And then I stop doing it. I miss a day, I stop doing it. And then, I haven't written in, 3 weeks after that. And it's like, that's just,
Right.
because I'm thinking like, I don't know. I don't know what I'm thinking. Maybe I'm not, but I personally have to write every day, even if it's like I said, like 25, 28 words. I've done that a lot. But it keeps me then writing the next day and the next day and the next day. And 28 words is 28 words. So
Mhm. Yeah, it's essentially the Seinfeld method,
yeah,
right?
oh, totally.
Just keep, you know, putting your butt in the chair every single day, and do something. One of the things that helped me too, sometimes helps at least. Well, it pretty much helps every single time, but is having that whole space where you've dedicated a slot of your day to it. And to me, the way I handle it is I go to the keyboard and I will sit there. Um, and that's my writing time. And I can choose not to do anything, but I have to sit there. So when I get off the horse, that's what I do. I just start putting myself in front of the keyboard, and it's like you can either sit here for an hour and look at the wall, or you can do something. What are you going to do with your time? Are you really going to sit there and look at the wall? So if that can be a trick that helps people. If you just say, this is my writing time, I don't have to write, but you have to sit there and not do anything else. But you're probably going to start writing because your imagination is going to start wandering almost automatically. So you may as well just start writing it down.
It's funny that you said that, because like that's how I finished this first draft. Was like my wife was like, how's it going? And I'm like, it's okay. And I'd come home from work, and I every day I was like sitting in my chair for the first 15 minutes that I got home. And then after that 15 minutes, I pulled my laptop out, I opened up my document, and I literally looked at it. And I just was like, even if all I do is just look at a couple of lines where I was at, and then I put a star, and I just at least wrote a sentence.
Hmm.
Wrote a sentence. And like 99% of the time, after I had went, and did everything and wrote that sentence, then, and I reread the couple paragraphs before that page, it was like, then the ideas started flowing, and I had to write.
Yeah.
And I feel like definitely like I'm going to be doing that in the future. It's like setting a timetable, like you said, and just like sitting down with the computer.
Yeah.
And I don't really, I kind of like that I don't have to be in my office to write. Like I could just put on headphones. I just put on 90s music. I don't know why. I think it's because I don't have to really listen to the words, just, and I think it emits, certain feelings and things. So kind
Hmm.
of makes me more creative that way. Um, but yeah, I think just sitting down with my laptop and having the document open, and Dirk Ashton really helped in one of their episodes, where he said, he's like, just do something, like,
Yeah.
and all you have to do is, reread a couple lines, and all of a sudden, it's like a spark hits. And I'm
Right.
so glad that he said that. And for me, that's really helped.
Mhm.
I'm kind of going crazy right now because I'm editing, and I'm not writing until I'm editing. So I have these 15 pages, and then tonight I can actually write again. 'Cause I
Right. Right.
promised a bunch of my friends for accountability and stuff.
Hmm.
But yeah, I'm like, my wife's like, how are you doing today? I was like, oh, pretty good. I was like, I'm gonna, go, meet David and then Jim. And then I said, I'm gonna finish this edit and I'm gonna like write. And she was like, oh my gosh, you haven't written in like 3 months. I'm like, well, I've never edited before, and editing
Right.
killed me. Like I'm actually the resurrected Dan before you, not, the original one. Killed me. But yeah, I think having that time is essential. And I like how you said that. It's kind of like elementary, like detention, like you're, or like lunch detention. You're just like sitting there, and you only have one task to do, and you can either do that task or just sit there. And
Right.
People
Yeah.
are just gonna get to work. So that's a great
Yeah.
advice right there. I like that.
Yeah. Getting started is the hardest part for me. Just starting the engine is the hardest part. But once it's turned over, you just keep going, so.
One of my students in the summertime when I was really struggling to finish my or just struggling to edit for the first time, she had asked me because I had her during the school year, and she's a huge writer, so we talked about it, and she threw back my teaching in my face because she's like, "Have you edited yet?" And I said, "No," and I said, "I'm just having trouble getting started." And she goes, "The first part's to start," and that's what I always tell them. And I was like, "Oh," I was like, "Why would you do that?" I was like, "Seriously, seriously." She's like, "Well, I want to read your novel," and I'm like, "Oh." So I came home, and that's when I actually started like really editing.
Right.
Yeah, I think any way that you can find to start, for either writing or editing or whatever, world building, I think it's better than better than us not getting different ideas from from your books and things like that. So I think
Absolutely.
that's great advice. Try and tell myself that daily. We tell myself that later when I only have 15 pages to edit. It's like, come on, man, get it together. All right, so I'm really interested in this fifth question. So if you had to sell us on the seven cadence in one sentence, what would it be?
Okay, so I'm bad at elevator pitches.
Me too. That's why I
It's
asked
the
you.
worst. It's the worst thing. So when people ask me, "What's your book about?" I'm like, there's characters and Game of Thrones, right? You don't, So I had to write this down. So I'm gonna read it because
I'm
I'm so
excited.
bad at it. It will just flee my head. So here we go. If you love long, epic fantasy stories with deep lore, dragons with a unique spin, and character journeys that are deeply cathartic, the seventh cadence is your wheelhouse. That is my one-line pitch.
That is a really good one. I like that. I asked this because I've been trying to practice my own. So I really like hearing yours. I'm just interested in your book just in general.
Mhm.
So for those of you guys that haven't checked out Jim's seven cadence yet, please make sure you check out the description for this YouTube video. It's also going to be in the Spotify link. And if you go onto Twitter or Facebook for our groups or my page, you can actually find Jim's book, The Seventh Cadence, there. So make sure you check it out. When I saw your link pop up the first time, I was just like, man, that looks so cool. And then I went and read the blurb, and like it hooked me instantly. So I think that's a really good way, at least from like your blurb and stuff and some of the reviews and things like that I've seen. I think it's a really good way to sell it. But it is really hard, right, to come up.
It is. Oh my goodness.
Hard enough to come up with a blurb.
Right, that took a long time. Surprisingly, it's not very long. And actually, what's even funnier is the original blurb that we came up with is longer, and we were struggling with it, trying to figure out like it doesn't quite flow right because there's a lot of characters, and I was trying to fit it in. And what we ultimately decided was kind of veer away from the characters because it was making it too choppy, which isn't ideal. But for my book, if I need to be honest with the reader about what it's about, I couldn't just say it's about this one character, because they'd read it and they'd flip the page and another character would pop up and they're like, wait, hold on. I was told it was going to be about this. So, we trimmed it down, and it just read so much better after we took a lot of the character stuff out. And perhaps there's a blurb that we can rewrite it into that will do what it actually needs to do even better. But I mean, it was hard writing that blurb. It was really difficult. So, yeah.
Well, I look at a lot of them. I talked to Dirk Ashton
Mhm.
about this. I look at a lot of them because right now, like I'm kind of practicing before I get done with mine. So that way, by the time I do get done, I can just be like, bam, and come up with a good one. And Miles Hurt and I talked about this. His was really good too. He's got like a really good little. So we check out actually me and Miles Hurt's episode, and that's for anybody here in the podcast listening or watching on YouTube. Miles came up with a really good little system that he taught us in that episode on how to write blurbs. But yeah, it's definitely a lot harder than it seems. But I really liked yours though. It was really good. And I was like, man, who is this person? Like, has this, really good, cover and really good blurb. And yeah, I went right to Amazon and picked up the book. So it's on my TBR. So I'm really excited. But yeah, I think I was interested because I really did like your blurb. And I had a couple people check it out too. And I was like, we were talking about blurbs in a private group I'm in. I was like, hey, check out Jim's blurb, here for the seventh cadence. And they really enjoyed it too. So we just wanted to let you know that we thought it was a really good one personally. We kind of used it as like kind of like a framework for, just blurbs that we liked and, thought that, they were really good advertisement. But now you have a one sentence blurb that, that you can use for.
I know.
It was really
know.
good. I liked it.
Thank you. I'm gonna try to use it now.
If you asked me that, I'd be like, Jim, get out of here. Somebody asked me that the other day because I asked them a similar question, and they were like, yeah, so next time when I come on, they're like, you're gonna have to give me your blurb. And I was like, that's fair. I was like, let me finish the story first so I actually know what the blurb is. But yeah, so they already called me out on it. So
what's interesting, one thing, I think it's based on the Snowflake method, but a lot of, maybe not a lot, I actually don't know what the actual percentage rate is, but I'm sure there are a lot of authors who do this, but some authors I know do this, where they write their blurb first. You know what I mean? They call their shot and then say, this is what I want people to be attracted to. So they write the perfect blurb and then they write the novel for that perfect blurb. It's challenging to do that because, like, what if you have a different idea while you're writing? I mean, I guess you have to be the kind of person who will just write the thing. But yeah, I mean, that's one method if you ever need it in your back pocket.
Yeah. So that's interesting because for me, I feel my friend said this. He's like, your books are always like stories are always like a Power Ranger. He's like or a Pokemon. He's like they always morph into something else, and that's the issue right now with mine is like, I was going through and I had these three characters and I want to tell their story, but then it's like for draft 2, I know I'm gonna have to like take a character out, switch another one, and then put 2 more in. And I had 2 characters that popped up out of nowhere that I was writing, and I love them, but they don't fit the story. And I was like, but I love them. So I was like, well, I'm going to take them and put them into a different book. And it was, so I'm like, I was saying to him, he was like, well, this is totally different than what you were saying with these characters. He's like, but they add to the story. Because he's the only one I let in on pretty much like 70% of the book and what's happening. But yeah, it's like, I'm thinking like, man, like he said, he was like, you probably shouldn't write your blurb till later because he's like, you're a morpher. Like it constantly, he's like, who knows
right.
what, the last draft is going to be. Cause I did try that. But it helped me out though for the 3 main characters. And I've stuck to that original blurb for the 3 main characters. And it's really just like secondary characters now that I think are helping to add to the story. But yeah, I've known people actually, it's funny that you said I've known people that have done that and have followed through. I feel like I'm too much of a pantser and I'm trying to get more organized.
Right.
So like that's my goal one of these days is to like have such a good story, that I'm like, yep, here's the blurb, and then it matched at the end. Just to like prove to myself that I can do it.
Right.
And I'm not.
Well, I mean, if it's not your process, I mean, it's probably not your process.
Yeah.
I wouldn't try to force yourself into a box you don't fit in. But
yeah, I just want to prove to my friend I can do it.
It's a good challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, anyways, that was a really good 1 sentence blurb there. I wasn't sure how it was gonna go because I know for me it wouldn't have gone well. So you did much better than I would have with it. So that's a really good one. And I noticed this. So tell us more about Emergent Realms. I had just saw that pop up, and that to me just seems so interesting. So I'd love to know more about that so I could help promote that more. So.
Yeah, so Emergent Realms is essentially a very, very infant small press that me and a few other authors, got together and decided to join forces and make something bigger than we could probably do by ourselves. I've always been a DIY person. I did a lot in music before I started writing again. When I did go into, decide to go back to start writing, the first thing was like, oh, well, I got to get, an agent and an editor and a press. And I didn't like the idea of that, but I was like, well, that's what you got to do to get published. And as soon as I found out about self-publishing, I was like, well, not doing any of that. Like it was absolutely natural for me to go indie and not go the traditional route. That's not for everybody, but that was 100% for me. So, naturally, that's what I was going to do. And I tried a couple of different routes. I was just going to do it myself at one point. And then at one point, I was working with Sterling and Stone. I don't know if you've ever heard of them, but they used to do this self-publishing podcast back in the day. I started working with them for a little while, but really, I kind of had an itch to do my own thing, so I left Sterling and Stone. I started my own thing, and honestly, it was kind of good that I worked with Sterling and Stone for a little while first because, oh man, they taught me a whole lot. They were really smart guys. But that's basically the idea of Emergent Realms, is that we're trying to make the best science fiction and fantasy stories that we can. And we want to be the most premium, indie fantasy story studio basically out there. So, we have a long way to go. We're basically just getting started, but we're very hopeful that it's gonna do very well.
Well, I think you guys picked a good genre. I was just talking to Mallory Kuhn about this yesterday. There's just so, like, you look at the class of indie publishing, right, that came out last year, and it's just like, I trying to think of, there's only a few authors, I think, for traditional publishing that I think even compared to, these people who are just busting out just amazing work, and
Right.
we talked about that on this podcast quite a bit over the last few months, where it's like indie publishing, particularly for fantasy and sci-fi, it's just like, I just feel like fantasy in particular is very interesting because, like, I just always tell people, like, when I met Kevin Hearn, Brandon Sanderson, Patrick Rothfuss, Kevin Hearn's just always just the coolest freaking person on the planet to me, and he was bringing all these indie publishers in, particularly in fantasy, and it was just super cool to meet people, who were just starting out, kind of like Brian McKellen and some of these other people, and to really see where they're at now, to me is really interesting. And it's just cool to see, the community from what it was 10 years ago when I met some of these people, and now, there's some of the premier, fantasy and sci-fi authors in indie publishing. So I definitely think it's a good it's a good market to get into. And these smaller presses, I think, are, I don't know, I see people and they're like, like you look at Subterranean Press, for instance, and look at them, like, what, I think it was 7 years ago, I think was the first time I had seen something from them, and they were in the same boat as you guys, and now look at them, they have some exclusives for some of the the hottest novels and projects, from some of the best authors on the planet. So
yeah, I mean, you got to start somewhere, and going indie and creating something so small kind of gives us a little bit of a superpower because we're a little more agile. But we get to really do it the way that we think is best, which may not necessarily be the most profitable thing, but we can actually be a little more passionate about it and put what we think the project needs over what is the fastest way to get to $1 million or whatever it is, the goal is for, your accounting department, so, that's fantastic. And I'm just kind of very appreciative that, we're starting to get to the place now where indie fantasy is kind of getting respected now. And I always thought that was very weird, that they weren't automatically as respected. And I think it's just because publishing is a very long and old industry and with established rules. But when you look at other creative endeavors, like when you hear the word indie musician or indie film
Yeah.
or indie video games, you don't think, oh, this is going to be trash. This is going to
Yeah.
be horrible. You don't think that automatically. You think, oh, this is somebody creating something that might be a little bit outside of the box, or might be a little interesting or quirky, or off the beaten path. And for a long time in publishing, indie authors, whilst there were a lot of people who were very passionate about it, readers who were very passionate about it, by and large, big publishing was not very happy with us. And I think there was a lot of campaigns that
Oh, for sure.
kind of made it look like what we were doing was kind of inferior. And we just kept going, and just ignored it, and just said, we're gonna do our best work, and the readers will decide, and that's where we are. So
And I think it really speaks to, personally, I think it really speaks to, like me, for instance, like I just love talking to authors. I love talking to, artists. Like indie comics for me have been a huge thing for a long time. I just got so tired of DC and Marvel, and and then Valiant, even when I got into Valiant, it was indie, and now they're like a big name company. But like
right.
I guess, yeah, I just totally agree with you. I think it's just, I think people were for a long time, for publishing, novels for fantasy and sci-fi for the indie community, were just trying to say it was a bad indie press. And, I think
Yeah.
there was that campaign, and that's what I had thought at first. And then, here I am, with Brandon Sanderson, Kevin Hearn, and Patrick Rothfuss, and Michael J. Sullivan. And then here are all these indie authors, and I'm looking at their product and just like, God, these sound awesome, like there were so many cool books that year too that had come out from the indie community. And I was just like, holy moly, and a lot of the people who were even at that show who were traditionally published had started off like, like Michael J. Sullivan in the, the indie community. So for me, it was just like really cool. And it really opened my eyes to the indie community, because I'd always wanted before that to be traditionally published. But I talked to a few people, and at that show in particular, and one of the authors was like, hey, check out that book over there, and then come back and see me, like go read the blurb on that book, or read the quotes and things. So I read it, and then I noticed like he had quoted her book, and then she had quoted this person's over here. And I came back, and he was like, so what did you learn? And I'm like, well, you guys must be pretty tight, because I said every single one of you has read and then blurb someone else's book. And he was like, yeah, one of the best things about this community is the community. And that just totally changed my perception of, fantasy and sci-fi indie publishing, and just indie publishing just in general. But I think the fans have just been, tremendous. Like I'll go to anybody's website, I'll check out their novel, review it, just to help them out. It's been awesome to see the community grow. So I really hope you guys experience the same success as Subterranean Press. And who knows, maybe your early TSR. I hope so. So there's plenty of room in the industry, and
Yeah,
it
absolutely.
just adds to it, I guess, is my point. It adds to it. And I think the better the competition, I think the better the writing will be, and the better the books. And I think everybody will just profit from it, like they already have. So I
Right.
I see it as everybody's on the same team. So
Oh
hopefully.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. That, and in fact, within Emergent Realms, when we first started, we kind of started from culturally principles and culture based approach. When we first started, the first thing we did was like write up a document about what are our values as a company, and one of the things in there was you know co-opetition, basically, which is a buzzy word that's saying, we're not really in competition with anyone, and if anybody comes to us and they want help with something, we're just going to tell them the truth, and give them the help they need. If we can just do it, we'll give them help. There's no reason. Readers read way faster than I can write.
Yeah, yeah.
So I don't mind, helping some other author who's really great, get ahead. I mean, that's fantastic, because now my readers have something to read while they're waiting for me,
Totally.
So yeah, it's all about community in the indie world, and that's a big deal for us. Yeah.
Well, that's super cool. And like I said, if there's anything, we can do, if you guys want to come, and do an episode together or something like that, we'd love to have you guys on and, help spread the word, or, anything we can do to help you guys out with that. Cause it just seemed to me, I was like, wait a minute, that's cool. So then, I immediately checked out, anywhere where I could find you guys on the web. And I was reading, I was like, that's just really cool. So yeah, if there's anything we could do to help you guys out or help you, get a bigger audience, please, please, please just let me know.
Absolutely.
So I'm really interested in your answer for this one. We've had everybody's had some really good recommendations. So, who are some authors, or what are some books that you would recommend to our audience?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, because of Emergent Realms, I have to recommend
Cool.
Violent Blessed.
I was hoping.
Violent Blessed by A.H. Serrano. I brought along visual aid.
Awesome.
So Violent Blessed by A.H. Serrano. It's like YA dark fantasy. And it is beautifully written. I actually had the opportunity, because it's with Emergent Realms, and I do a lot of the dev editing there. I have,
cool.
I got to touch it, so that's fun. Serrano, she's just a fantastic novelist, and it kind of has like touches of horror, like possession, and the magic system's really fun, because it's like kind of like a elemental thing, but then there's like more to it than that. With a spirit-based magic, it's amazing. It is amazing. And one of the cool things with the world building there that I think you might appreciate is that the characters are all bilingual.
Oh, so, that's really cool.
Because the common tongue, like the casual, there's the informal way of saying things, and there's the formal, and the formal is the old tongue, and the informal is that's just cool. What everyone else. So sometimes they'll say something, or they'll use certain terms. We had to put a whole glossary in the book because of that, but they'll use. But we wrote it so. She wrote it so that you can understand it just by the context. But the glossary's there just to help you, because there's a lot of words in there that are from the old tongue. So, and when you refer to someone who's your elder, or you're talking to a certain type of person, you use words in the old tongue. Anyway, fun world building.
That's really cool. That's really cool.
So this is the next one I have to recommend, is Nightblade.
Oh, I got that one. I love Garrett, man. I've been following Garrett for a long time now.
Yeah, are you going to interview him? Because you should have him on.
You know what? I'll be honest. If you could help me out with that, I was trying to find his contact info the other day, and I don't know if his email, because I'm on his newsletter, and I tried emailing back, because him and I emailed a few years ago, and he actually helped me out quite a bit with different ideas, and just like kind of like the industry and stuff, and he was just so cool. For some reason, I don't have that email. Like I don't know what happened with my Yahoo, because I thought I had saved it, but I guess I didn't.
Right.
And I had.
I'll put you guys in touch.
Because I really liked that book. That was a great one.
Right. Yeah. And his whole series is expanded. I mean, I think he has like 12 books now, like 12 or 15. And it's amazing. And luckily I get a chance to read a lot of them, because I'm helping him with his audiobooks a bit, cool. So he narrates his own audiobooks. He's a great narrator. And he narrates them all, and then he sends them to me, and I help him clean them up a little bit, so he doesn't have to do that work, because that's pretty tedious. So I do a lot of his work for that. But yeah, so there's that, and I don't have one with me right now because I haven't ordered a paperback yet. I've just been reading an ebook. But J.C. King's Songs of Insurrection. Have you heard of those books?
No, not yet, but I actually got book one. So my thing is, I usually try and do paperbacks, but I didn't realize that like people were making like 70% off the sales for Kindle. So I had for some people, when they were like, $1 or $2 a little while back, I was just like running through and grabbing all of them.
Right.
And I was like, well, I'll just, read what I want. Like that was like how Hellborn King was for Christopher G. Brenning. And I was just like, oh, I'll just grab the paperback later. So I just like read it on Kindle. But I actually, for JC, I would love to have JC on too. I grabbed book one a little while back. That's going to be my next thing, is like kind of like, like JC style. Because I have a fantasy book planned, trilogy planned, once I get done with my first two, where it's like I have this like Asian style country and this like diplomat, and I kind of wanted to,
Nice.
try to read, those. I mean, 'cause they've been really popular, so I would love to see, what's going on with those books, because I have so many friends that have recommended them, and JC just seems really cool. So
Yeah. He seems like a really cool guy. I haven't had a chance to talk to him in person yet. So, I mean, definitely try to get him on the podcast
no, I
because
am.
I'd love
I
to see more
honestly,
content
like,
from him.
my friend was talking about how oh my gosh, who was I just talking to? They just met him. They like, I don't, they were at two different shows together. And I was like
Mhm.
so jealous, because I was just like, oh man, to be like, to be between both of them and interview both of them in person would
Right.
have been so cool. And so I
Yeah.
was trying to get a hold of him to be like, where were you guys? Like, are you guys gonna be together? Because it was two different shows where they were like, the stalls were right next to each other.
Right.
Trying to see like, like what they were doing. But yeah, like, yeah, he would be a really cool one too. He's actually on my second round of people that I'll be getting a hold of for this
Excellent. Excellent.
one. So yeah, anybody for you guys, you want to send my way, I'd be more than happy to interview them. And like I said, splash Emergent Realms all over the internet. So
Yeah, I mean, I'll send H Serrano your way.
oh, that'd be awesome.
And we're working with another author. We're gonna try to get it out next year, which will be fun. We're just trying to get ahead on the, get a few books ahead actually this time. So, you know, uh, so we haven't really formally announced him, but there's another
Oh, that's cool.
author coming down the pike,
Oh, cool.
probably towards the end of next year. So I'm
Oh,
very
cool.
excited about that.
So we'll definitely have to schedule an episode then, to help you
Mhm.
guys with that, after you guys have done that. So that'd be really cool to help you guys out with that.
Thanks. Yeah, that'll be awesome.
Sweet, awesome. All right, well, those are some great recommendations. Like I said, I followed Garrett for a long time, read a couple of his first books, and they've been awesome. So I actually was just thinking of him yesterday because else had recommended one of his newer ones, and I was like, oh, I haven't, I was like, I haven't read one of Garrett's in a while. Like him and Daniel Aronson were probably two of the first ones that I had read, on
Hmm.
Kindle and just absolutely loved, and they actually really opened my eyes to, just indie, because like I said, like people had trashed it for a long time that I knew and stuff. And I think it was more they didn't understand like what was going on. And, so I read, Garrett's first two books, and then I had read Daniel Aronson's, oh, I totally blank, his series where it's like both night and day on the world. I don't know why I'm blanking on it.
Yes,
Oh,
I can't.
so
I'm
good.
blanking on that too, but
Oh,
I know which one you're
so
talking
I
about.
read the
Yeah.
first four, and
Mhm.
they're just so good. Like I'm like, I was like amazed by his writing, his characters, and like I was like, this is indie. And then David Gilgesh,
Mhm.
with his two orc series was just like, I read the
Oh,
first one of
right.
that, yeah, and I was
Mhm.
just like, oh, this is indie. And then
Right,
it was like
right.
I was done after that, and my wife was my girlfriend at the time. She was like, "Man, you really like these books." I'm like, "Yep." And little did she know our basement. We'd be married, 8 years later. Our basement would be full of indie fantasy and sci-fi books. But
Right, yeah.
should have been, in the should have been in like a contract or something like that. She always said, she's like, "I wish I had put that somewhere. You can only buy like 5 a year or something." But I said, then we'd
Yeah.
have to do it with shoes or something like that, and then she didn't like that, so we decided to leave it out of the prenup. So, so do you have any promos or news or updates, current projects, anything like that that you'd like to share with our audience?
Um, yeah, so our most recent thing right now is the seventh cadence. So I mean, if you want to pick up something that is kind of in the spirit of like Brandon Sanderson, Brent Weeks, Robert Jordan, but 100% indie, then pick up the seventh cadence. I mean, uh, definitely for fans of epic fantasy. So uh, the best price is on Amazon, but if you want a signed copy, you can get it from the website. I sign
Oh,
them,
cool.
I spank them on the bottom and send them right out. So,
Awesome.
and of course we have a whole merch store there. So it has a lot of stocking stuffers for fantasy fans. So if you need a new mug or cool, nerdy, readerly kind of t-shirt or something like that, that's kind of leaning towards the fantasy, that's the place to get it. So, or if you know someone that, that you don't really know who to get a gift for, but they love reading, yeah, the merch store there would be fantastic. So.
Oh, that's awesome. I have to check that out. I'm trying to do my Christmas shopping this weekend for my friends. So
Yeah.
have to get through that. That's really cool. And all right. So once again, Jim, want to thank you for coming on. We want to thank everybody for tuning in again to another episode of the Fantasy and Sci-Fi Fanatics podcast. You can find this video on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and the audio on Spotify. So thank you to my best friend Dave for getting the Spotify working. It was all him.
Ooh, Dave.
Yeah. So I was really excited because that was like what I tried doing from the start. It just was not working for me. So he worked with me for about a week and a half and finally got everything figured out. So thank you, Dave. He doesn't get paid yet, so we're just going to thank him. Maybe days of the Patreon. Make sure you guys also don't forget, I do leave it in the description, so feel free to email me at scholarsofuma, that's UMA@gmail.com. If you have anything, that you'd like to tell Jim, like, hey, really love the 7 cadence. Hey, where can I find it? In case you don't know how to, get to the description on YouTube or Spotify. But, any comments, questions, things like that. Maybe you really liked a character or the story, I would really love to start passing those questions and comments off to authors. It's almost crazy, right, Jim? It's like you guys would really love to hear people's, questions and comments and,
Absolutely.
after
I spend so much time in these worlds, if somebody wants to talk about it, I'm full of information.
Exactly. So I'd love to connect you guys, with Jim, any of our other authors. If there's anybody you want to see on the podcast in the future, if you're like, oh, we really love Jim's, advice, things like that, make sure and, we'll make sure we can make it happen sooner rather than later. If you have any questions for future guests like Jim, or you're something, like we usually, like you guys know, try to do an introductory episode. If there's something that, you really want us to cover with Jim later, or, Emergent Realms questions or something like that, email me and we'll get it to Jim and his team right away. If you guys have any, videos or pictures that are fantasy or sci-fi related, if you want to cosplay someone in the 7th cadence, feel free and we'll pass it on to Jim for you guys.
Yes, let's do it.
Excellent. All right, Jim. Well, I really appreciate you coming on and talking. I was really looking forward to having you on ever since I saw that cover and read that blurb. So I'm really glad that we could have you on. And like I said, I'd love to have you, back on in the future. If you want to bring anybody else from, the team with you, please feel free and we'll set that up as soon as we can for you guys.
Excellent. Thank you so much. This has been an absolute joy.
Awesome. Well, I hope you have a good rest of the day, my friend. And I look forward to talking to you on Twitter some more.
All right. Take care, man.
You too. Have a good one.